One of the things they talked about was just juxtaposition, that's hard to say, and that is two things side by side that don't normally go together. So in this image that I created, you could think of it as the table being in this kind of outdoor desert area. That's one thing. It could be the clock hanging on a tree or the girl meditating out in this open, strange area. You'll also notice that a lot of these things can overlap each other, okay, and it's a little bit confusing. You may have had a rough time with the 13.1 quiz that asked the questions about all these different things and the differences between them, and there is some overlap, so I understand if you had a hard time with that. The other one that you learned about was transformation. That's turning something familiar into something unusual and disturbing. It could be this ice cube, which I turned into a sun or something up in the sky. It could be the girl who has a hole in her stomach, and it could be the clock that's not normally melting. Okay, so already we've had some overlap with those. Dislocation is objects placed where they shouldn't be. Again, that could be the table out in the desert area. Okay, so again, we have lots of overlap there. And metamorphosis, an object that is changed into something else. Okay, that in this would be the ice cube that has been changed into the sun up in the sky. All right, now in the next part of the video, you're going to hear about some other things, mostly relating to the work of Salvador Dali. He used symbols a lot, so you're going to learn about a lot of the symbols that he used, and you're also going to learn about a method he created called paranoid critical method. Okay, and that is when you look at something and see something else within it. It's kind of like looking at the clouds and seeing something in the cloud that's not really there. He used a lot of rocks that he used to look at when he was a child, and so this creature right here may have been something he saw in a rock, or this creature right here. These are all things that you can use in your surreal image that you create. You don't need to use all of them, but you should use at least 2 of them. Okay, so we should see some of these surreal methods in your final product. Before you get started, what you should do is you should create a folder. I just called mine Surrealism Files. And I started collecting things. You can see in here I started collecting things that I wanted to use in my final composition. So I have my background, I have the ice cube, which I've already altered. It's a PSD file. The girl's a PSD file because I had removed her from the background. You can see I used different clocks, the clock back. I found this creature, this kind of dead tree, and this table that I used. Okay, so start collecting images that you think you may want to use. And I'm going to go ahead and leave you with the second half of the Surrealism film. Next time, we'll get into the actual procedures of doing some of these things. I know I said I would do it this time, but I didn't want this video tutorial to go too long for you. Okay, so we'll be doing that next time, but go ahead and get your file set up. Remember, you get to choose the size. Make sure you keep it 300 dpi. You can make it portrait or landscape. That's up to you. And you want to use at least 2 of the surrealist methods that they talked about in the video. And you could use more. And of course, you know that they overlap.
The unusual landscape around Cadaqués was very influential to the young Dali. He would study the rocks and cliffs and saw animal and human shapes. And when he looked at the rocks at different times of the year, the light and shadows made them change again. And he saw even more images. Dali never forgot these strange shapes and landscapes, and he used them over and over in his later works.
Dali began to mix into his paintings childhood fears and memories in the form of symbols. One of these symbols was a grasshopper.
When Dali was a kid, he chased and collected grasshoppers. One day, he caught a strange-looking fish called a slobberer and saw the face of a grasshopper. Dali freaked out and was filled with terror.
The kids at school found out and teased him, threw grasshoppers at him, and hid them in his desk.
Dali remembered these events from his youth and began to put grasshoppers in his paintings. He wanted to fill the viewer with the same shock and disgust that he felt. Dali had many symbols that reappear often in his works, including grand pianos, egg-shaped objects, watches, ants, and crutches.
One evening in 1931, Gala went to the movies with friends while Dali stayed at home. Dali had been working on a painting that featured the deserted landscape near Port Lagat. Dali was about to go to bed and looked over at the painting. He started thinking about the hardness and softness of objects and remembered the camembert cheese he had eaten earlier. Dali went over to the painting and suddenly saw 3 limp watches, soft like camembert cheese. When Gala returned from the movies, Dali showed her the finished painting. He asked her if she thought she would remember the painting in 3 years. Gala told him that no one who saw the painting would ever forget it. She was right, and the painting, The Persistence of Memory, which hangs in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, is one of the 20th century's most famous works of art.
Perhaps Dali's major contribution to the Surrealist movement was something he called the paranoid critical method. The theory was inspired by the rocks that Dali saw as a child, the ones that looked like faces and animals, but at the same time were also rocks. Dali's paranoid critical method was a process to look at an object and see other things within it that don't really exist. One result of this practice were works known as double image paintings, where one form contains 2 or more images. This painting, Slave Market with the Disappearing Bust of Voltaire, is an example of a double image painting. At first glance, you see merchants in the market. Some lean against the walls, others walk through a high arched window. But if you look at the painting again, there's something else going on. Can you see the disappearing bust of Voltaire? Now, Voltaire was a French writer and philosopher. This bust is in the Louvre Museum in Paris, and when Dali saw this, he visualized a double image. What Dali has done is hide the bust within the marketplace. Can you see it now? The arched window becomes the forehead. The 2 merchants' heads are the eyes. The merchant's collars become the nose and cheeks. And the merchant's sleeve becomes the chin. Now that you've seen the double images, it's impossible for you to ever look at this painting the same way again. In 1945, Dali collaborated with film director Alfred Hitchcock on the film Spellbound. Dali created the design for a dream sequence in which the main character of the film, Gregory Peck, had lost his memory and is accused of murder. Dali created sketches and 10 concept paintings that were recreated through the use of props, miniatures, and trick photography. I hope today's journey into the world of Surrealism and the life of Salvador Dali was, for you, just the tip of the iceberg. Hope you had fun getting surreal with us.
Thanks for watching.